We really have to dive in and peel back the layers of, personal credit, business credit. How does it start? Because we don't go to school for this, growing up. We don't, it's like the school of hard knocks. That's
School of
what we
Hard
go to.
Knocks. That's
We
right.
get that college credit card where it's like between 500 and 700 bucks, and then we use it, and then we think it's unlimited, and it's that gift that keeps on giving, but they don't teach us the rules of engagement. Yeah, many entrepreneurs they do rely on personal credit to fund their businesses, and this goes from realtors, loan officers, construction workers. I we help the gamut of people, teachers, and so at the end of the day, when it comes to when you have your personal credit, it's really important to understand, first of all, how that works in terms of like for a business, you have to be what's called you have to personally guarantee a loan, right? And what better person to personally guarantee a loan for your business than yourself?
Mm.
And that's where like the personal credit really comes into play because with personal credit, you can be a personal guarantor. And if you're a personal guarantor for your business, you actually have the ability to be a sponsor for your business, the best person to vouch for yourself or investing in yourself, and then you have some kind of like, some say in that. That's what that allows you to do. So, personal credit and having really good personal credit allows you to have a voice for yourself as it pertains to getting approved for business loans. Not only that, once you get approved for a business loan, you have the ability to get a company car and where it's separate from your personal credit. That company car that you drive, you're going to drive anyway. Now that's not only a write off, but it's not going on as a debt on your personal credit because you're leveraging your business and your EIN number. You see, you see
Yeah.
how that's a transportation that you go to work every day that if you don't get credit for it. If you don't get credit for that, and for your business, and that liability go or that asset or that liability goes on your business versus your personal, that's a big swing right there. Because the truth and reality is, you're going to be used. Your personal credit is going to be used either for you or against you in terms of the approval process.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So I know when you're getting started, you just want to get started because you want to be in motion, right? So, since I think for most people who are getting into business for the first time, we already had credit cards, we already had personal credit, so that's like the most thing. That's the thing we could use like the most immediately. But when it comes to like once you get into your business after you've been in it for a minute, then you start saying like, okay, is what I'm doing right now the best? Is this good practice, right? And with Credit Pulse, so your credit repair business, it's not just for fixing personal credit. You also help educate and get people started on the right path. So, like, let's just say me, for instance, right? I have personal credit from my personal, not my business, not my EIN number. So, how would you go about helping me transitioning into like I guess establishing and opening up I guess business lines of credit? How would that work?
Yeah, so the first thing I would ask you is like, so what type of business are you in? Real estate, and so typically with real estate agents, uh, or like, most there's a lot of businesses that an LLC would fit like perfect for, right? And so when you have a like, let's just call it a, because entities do matter, and I always like let my clients know, hey, refer to a tax professional that the best entity that best fits your business. And
Mm.
let's just say an LLC comes back, right? And so when you have an LLC, you should have a tax ID that is attached to that LLC. Not only that, there's an operating agreement that's attached to that LLC. There's a statement of information that's attached to that LLC, and so when you combine those things, there's a bank account, right? That's attached to that LLC. And that bank account is key because when you receive money, it either has to go into a personal account or a business account, right? And so, if it goes into a business account, that's what qualifies you for the tax benefits of write-offs or the tax benefits of having an asset that's held in that LLC. Let's talk about assets. Let's talk about houses, right? Let's talk
Mhm.
about cars. Let's talk about insurance instruments, financial instruments through insurance, like life insurance. And so when you have those assets, like bonds, municipal bonds, right? You have that, right? And these are assets that you can park in your LLC, right? And so when you have that LLC versus just being a sole proprietor or just only having a personal bank account, but you're operating your business, so Uncle Sam's going to look at that as like, why you're running a business, but you have a personal business. I mean, you have a personal account, or you have a sole proprietor where you're liable. Your levels of liability, like they're thin, and so you see how, like, for a tax professional, if you're operating like that and you go to a tax professional, they're probably going to ask you like, let me ask you, why are you doing this? And if it's just lack of information, that's the first layer of where you can get educated. When clients come to us for credit and they ask for, because we're consultants obviously for that, and so they ask us that, and we ask those questions of why, and if the answer is because no one told me how to do it differently, or no one educated me, or I haven't looked at that, well, that's where that Pandora's box get open, and now all of a sudden we can start having some conversations of like, how can we do it better? How can we fully equip you with our team to help you so it's a win for you and your family? uh, uh, Credit, tax, LLC. See how that literally is where now, once we have that conversation, we can really dive into the why, on both sides. Why are you in business? And then also, if it's lack of education, why have you been operating like this? And then
Mm.
if we can have answers to those whys, that's what gets us closer to like being more productive and being more, putting a better plan together than you had before.
Mm. Gotcha. Let me ask you. So, say if you have like $40,000, like that you have access to on your personal credit side, would it be safe to say for business credit you can mirror that, or how does the I guess approval process work for applying for business credit?
Yeah, I mean, business credit is really like, it's all based off of where you're going to obtain that business credit, right? Because business credit could be, like I mentioned earlier, it could be like getting a company car, right? And so that's an automotive loan, which, typically in automotive loans, they want to make sure that, just like most lenders, that you can pay the loan back, but there's a lot less red tape in terms of getting a car versus, let's just say, getting a house, right?
Mm.
And so when it comes to on the business side of that, um, not only can you use your personal credit as a guarantor, and then when you get the car, now that trade line, just like on your personal credit, that trade line now is reporting to your business credit, right? And in business credit, they have, different, um, they, some of them are the same credit reporting agencies. Like, there's Business Equifax, Business Experian, but then there's also Dun and Bradstreet, which that's business credit as well, which will read a paydex score based off of your trade lines. And so a trade line is really where you've you've gone to you've got you've taken a loan out, or you've got some type of trade contract, and then you've borrowed money and you've paid it back, you know
Mm.
and that's really what a trade line is. I know a lot of people don't really talk about that, but like, a trade line is like you're borrowing money and you're paying it back, and it shows your history and your tendencies and your behavior in terms of payment history. And that's on both sides, on business and personal. And at the end of the day, when you know both sides, then you can create these trade lines. And then when I say curate, you go to like a Bank of America and say, hey, I want to buy a car under my business. Well, by getting that car, Bank of America is going to want to report that trade line to your business credit report, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then if you can do the same thing. You can go to Bank of America and say, hey, I want that same car, but they can you say I want it for my personal use, right? And so they're going to report that trade line to your personal credit report, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so really, as a consumer, I want to know what are the benefits of both as it pertains to me and my family. And when
Mm-hmm.
you ask that question, and that's why you really these whys, your whys should be answered in a way where it's a solution to your why.
I
And
got you.
if that solution is like, this is, the business is the best way to operate because I'm running a business, but if I'm not getting the credit for it, literally the credit, if the credit's going in the wrong place, like if the credit's going on my personal account, and so that's going to put me in a debt situation because when I get a loan and when I call the Mr. Banker and I ask, for them to approve me, they're going to look at my debt to income ratio, right? And if that debt to income ratio is really high on my personal because I'm running my business under it, that's going to be a problem because that's not really the true picture that I want to paint. That's not the
Mm-hmm.
true reality that's really going on, only because of maybe lack of information. Maybe I haven't, got that LLC or that S corp or that C corp or that nonprofit. And now I'm operating under my personal. We like let's be honest, you know, when you're getting started, and if you don't go to school for this and you don't research it, how are you going to know? So
Yeah.
it's like, let's not beat ourselves up when that happens. It's more of like, what are the solutions? What's my why now? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Let's recognize, like, hey, we may have a problem because we might be uninformed, and let's find a solution. So let me ask you, because I know people like to understand things step by step, right? Because I think that's how we kind of learn. And that's very intuitive for us. So step by step, like if you could say like maybe the first 3 steps on how to get started, as far as like maybe contacting you, or if they wanted to get more information, how would that work?
Yeah, like, the consultation is always the best because that's when we can really dial into what the client wants.
Yeah.
And I've been doing this for over 10 years, and when it comes to really finding out what the client wants, it happens in the consultation. And the cool thing is we offer a free consultation.
Okay.
And what that free consultation allows us to do is really dive into what's the story, what's the backstory behind where the client is. And that empathy that we have for that is it's one of our core values. And so understanding and empathizing how people got to where they are. And there, like you said earlier, there's a need. If there's a need, we need solutions to that need. And by really the understanding and having empathy, we can really dive in and pull back the layers. Now, once we find that out, then it's a matter of, okay, step two is really identifying what's the short term, midterm, and long term goals, right? Because then we can have that blueprint for them to have success, right?
Mm-hmm.
And once you create that blueprint, it becomes we literally write it out because I'm a visual person, so I'll literally write it out on paper so we can see, okay, these are the goals, these are the action steps, and then when we have the blueprint, we can literally write that out as far as how to get there, and so that's step number two. And step number three is implementing that, and that's on both sides. That's the team effort piece that we talk about all the time. We got to work as a team to accomplish the client's goal, because it's not just us doing all the work and all of the heavy lifting, because if that's the case, then I mean, like, think about that. Like, that's not realistic, especially there's no guarantees in life. Let's be honest, right? So if that's not the case, then that means there's got to be the reciprocity in that in terms for the client. And we call that the homework, right?
Yeah.
Or the blueprint, and being consistent. Like when people say, hey, I have this goal, and then we match those action steps with that goal, then there's an accountability level that has to happen there. Because I can't say that I want to buy a house, but if it comes down to maybe paying down some credit cards, or maybe it's obtaining credit, so I can getting a trade line that's going to help me, right? If you
Mm-hmm.
know that information and you don't do that, you don't do your homework, but you're expecting to get that house, there's a disconnect in there, in that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so once it's laid out, the cool part about what we're talking about is we're both being held accountable for what we do, and in that consultation we map that out, so there's not a question of your roles and what you need to do and what you need to do to make things happen. It's clear on both sides, and I found in business, as long as you make it crystal clear on both sides how that's supposed to work, then we both can hold each other accountable for the mission. And then ultimately the mission in terms of home ownership, that if that's the mission, then it's really simple when you lay out the plan, and then it's all about execution from there.
Gotcha. Wow. So, I mean, very first thing is just scheduling a time to do a virtual consultation. I mean, that's, I think, one of the beautiful things about the day and age we live in, because we have the internet and we have this kind of accessibility with virtual chat. So we can, do what we're doing face to face, virtually, because it's the next best thing if we can't meet in person.
Absolutely, and we learned that through the whole COVID process.
Yeah.
Like the virtual meetings. Like even we're doing virtual right now. I can be in Melbourne Beach. You can be in Austin, Texas, and we're able to connect, and we're able to help people globally. Not only nationally but globally, because of the internet and how powerful it is. And with Chat GPT, with the internet, it's amazing what you can do. But the personal connections, like what we're having right now, the level of information that we're able to give out, the level of this being really organic. We're talking about topics that we can elaborate on, because ultimately we have experience in this, and then we can use that experience to help others. And so we use that same method and that same mindset when we're meeting with clients all over the nation, all over the globe, because we're able to schedule a Zoom call, and then that's where that accountability comes on showing up. And then when you show up and you show out, you have
Mm,
something like this, where we
yeah.
can really pass on some really good information that's going to help a lot of people.
Okay, last question before we move on to the next one. And I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here. What are some, I guess, business owners, sole proprietors that come and ask and utilize your business credit kind of services? What do they look like? What kind of jobs are they? Real estate agents? Are they franchisees? Are they just like barely getting started with trying to open up their own business? And they haven't done anything yet. Like, who's that kind of character look like?
Well, so since I've been in the business for so long, it's really the gamut of people, like janitors, lawyers, doctors, teachers, real estate professionals, mortgage professionals, contractors.
Ah,
When it comes to credit, I mean, like it really affects everybody, because we so heavily need it and use it to approve, to even get a job nowadays. There's companies that pull your credit. The military, casinos. When you're dealing with money. So like if you're a car dealer, and you're trying to get a job, credit is definitely going to like play a part in that application process. And so that being said, that the education side of it, we're allowed to like equip people with the ability to learn and assist entrepreneurs, because when you're working those jobs, believe it or not, like nowadays people are paycheck to paycheck. So if they lose that job, they almost have to have another source of income to be okay, or they're one paycheck away from being homeless and on the streets. Actually, like here in Melbourne, we're staying at a resort, and the 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 service workers here, he said he went on the top floor earlier this week. And normally they don't go. It's not like a rooftop bar or anything, but it's like where literally the roof is. And he found a man that had his alarm clock plugged in, or his alarm clock set up, and you could tell he was getting, he was living up there. And so he talked to him, and he asked him about his situation. And he said, he lost his house. He still has a job, but he's living on a rooftop right now because this is the only way he can literally survive right now. So he's got, an alarm clock to go to work. So he still has a job, fortunately. But think about it, if he had maybe like another, think about if he was an entrepreneur as well. Because let's be honest, we don't go to school to be entrepreneurs. We go to school to work for people, right? And so let's be clear with that, right? There is entrepreneurship programs in certain colleges, which I think that's great. But the way that we're kind of programmed in society is to like go to college, get a degree, and go work for whatever your aspirations are in life, right? But for that gentleman that was living on the roof, I mean, like literally on the roof of a resort, he obviously has been successful enough to have a job and to be able to like use whatever life got him brought his way to get to that place. But there's one thing that went wrong to where like now he's teeter-tottering, And so the beautiful thing about credit and the beautiful thing about being an entrepreneur is if you can set yourself up correctly, you can literally have only credit, right? And then know how that works to really create an opportunity for yourself to create a business as an entrepreneur, even if you're currently working a job, just so you don't. So you're creating layers away from being that guy or that woman that goes to having success to having to go to being homeless, literally in a matter of weeks or days or months. I mean, like, especially like places like, California, where, it's like so, I mean, like people, I'm from there. So like people like want to create this facade of I'm doing great. And all the actors and aspiring lawyers and actors and everything, they're there. But at the end of the day, you can be literally, it doesn't matter where you are, Texas, Florida. I'm in Florida right now. So you can literally be that close to having a living paycheck to paycheck from like having a great life or having a life where you're maintaining, where the economy can go like that. Remember when the gas prices went up, interest rates went up, and then like the market just completely changed? You can go from that to being homeless based off the economy, and so that's why we always talk about multiple streams of income, and the way you can do that is being an entrepreneur, because you can create your destiny, you can create opportunities for yourself by just having that knowledge. So I feel like some of the challenges as far as businesses being able to start their business credit is just really like the knowledge of knowing how you can do it. We talked about last week how, creating and setting up net 30 accounts, and so I feel like if you don't know about how to set a net 30 account up, like we use Quill, Granger, Uline, those are like the big three when it comes to like just from a basic level of just being able to create those business trade lines. And so a challenge is literally maybe actually knowing, number one, and number two, calling those companies and asking them, hey, so how do I create a net 30 account? I saw this podcast with Omar and Thomari, and they said it was pretty easy, and then you ask them that, and then they say, oh yeah, do you have an EIN number? And so like a challenge could be like, well, no, I don't. But then we have a solution of, oh yeah, you can go to, you can set it up, go online and be able to set up, your business entity, or actually going to the Secretary of State and like, if you're close to the Capitol, but at the end of the day, I think a challenge is really knowing that you can do this, and how we can help overcome these challenges is just continuing to provide this information. Credit Strong is another way where you can build business credit rather quickly. Credit Strong allows you to build personal credit and business credit based off of a savings account, right? So you're literally putting money away uh, to save it, but you're creating a trade line because you're paying. You're it's almost like you're borrowing against your own money, like a secured credit card.
Mm.
Where you're borrowing against. You're creating a trade line to where you're making payments, but imagine those payments go away into like a savings account, to where like after a year or 6 months, you're able to say, hey, maybe I'm done with this credit builder thing, and now you can get a check minus like the banking fees and things like that, but you get a check that literally allows you to be able to cash in on the savings that you've had. You see what I'm
Mm.
saying?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
so that credit strong is a really good product because it not only allows you to build on personal but also business. So on the business side, let's just say that it's been kind of hard for you. So we just gave a couple different solutions: Uline, Granger, the net 30s on your business, and then also Credit Strong. And then also when you go through Dun and Bradstreet, you can get what's called a credit builder account, where you're paying like 40-50 bucks a month, but that 40-50 bucks a month, because they are their credit bureau, they report that to your business credit as well, right? So we just talked about 3 or 4
Mm.
trade lines on your business side. So a challenge could be like, how do I build business credit? Well, these are ways where you can build business credit, and you can see the results of that business credit literally within 60 days. Now you have that same credit file that you've been working on your whole life, because because of your social security number attached to your credit that you literally been working on your whole life. You can create in 60 days a footprint and a credit profile on your business side as well. And now you have both. And having two versus one in this situation, and having them be where they show that it shows that you're credible. And let's just say it shows that maybe one of the challenges is like, it doesn't show I'm credible. So that's where we go to like somebody like a Credit Pulse, or a credit repair agency, where we're able to like educate you on like how to like not only build credit, but if there's negative items through the Fair Credit Reporting Act, be able to fight that. And that's on both personal and business, when it
Oh.
comes to negative items that we can help clients fight and get removed from the credit report. And so there's a process. That's why it comes down to everybody's different. And so once we look at the credit report, or the lack thereof a credit report, then we can say, okay, these are the steps that's going to take for you to get one, kind of like what we've been talking about today.
Yeah, yeah. So a big chunk of what I got from that, as far as answering that very last question of how does your service help overcome these challenges, a big part of that is knowing just the law, right? I think what was that credit law you just mentioned?
The Fair Credit Reporting Act is a big one, and then the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. For the these two practices really allow you to dispute to the credit bureaus, and that's really where we hold people accountable and hold companies accountable for reporting erroneous information on your credit report, or there could be inaccurate information on your credit report. 80% of credit reports have inaccurate and erroneous information on it. You know what I mean? Like
Wow.
80%. You know what I mean? So it's like, if these are facts. You can look this up. And so it's like, if
I
that's the
think
case,
yeah. Yeah, I mean that is crazy. 80% of credit reports have something in there that is wrong or is
that's not
possibly you can
right.
dispute. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
you could either take the time, Google those things yourself, or schedule a one-on-one call with Thomari and his team at Credit Pulse because they already know this information, right? Those two laws, those are my second or third times because I've been doing this with Thomari for a while now. But if you've never heard of it, I mean, right there, these are federal, right? Federal laws that were enacted. And this was not like last year or the last 10 years. These were enacted like decades ago that you're probably hearing for the first time in 2024 that you could use. This is information for you, the consumer, to protect you, to make sure you have something to dispute and you're not being taken advantage of.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. When you have power, you have empowerment to move forward for yourself, for your family. I know with this podcast, the goal is creating generational wealth for not only yourself but your family, and this is the beginnings. This is the foundation of doing that. Credit is foundational in terms of, you can start with that, and then the next step is finances, and then the next step is like financial literacy, and then once you have the knowledge, it's power that creates empowerment that allows you to actually have movement towards your goal, and when you're able to do that, it's the best feeling ever, because it's like now you, like the same people that were kind of having their head down, and they're wondering what can they do. Now you have your chest out and saying, hey, I know what to do now, and
Yeah,
now it's time to move forward because I have the information, and I can move forward now because of that.
absolutely. What you said earlier was a bar. You said knowledge is power, and that, what was that last part you said?
That creates empowerment. And
Empowerment.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that creates movement, because when you
Yeah.
have that, and you have all those things like happening like that, that's the foundation of change, and change as it means to you, and one step closer to your goals, and one step closer to how you can create generational wealth for yourself and your family. If generational wealth is your goal, I love to use the term, let's reverse engineer it from there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're talking about long term, right?
Mm.
When we're creating generational wealth, we're not talking about necessarily tomorrow. Although tomorrow can be an action step, we're talking about, you know, long term, whatever that means. Every long term is going to mean different for everybody, but ultimately, if we can reverse engineer generational wealth, then trust, the conversation of trust, have to be in the conversation, and why a trust, and how you can pay yourself through a trust. That conversation has to happen. Uh, uh, Retirement, how you're leveraging your retirement accounts, and how they're structured, has to be a conversation. When you're talking about life insurance, and how life insurance can literally, you can set up your own, you can be your own banker, and as far as infinite banking, that has to be a part of the conversation of, generational wealth. When you're talking about LLCs, like we've been talking about on this podcast, we have to. Do you have an LLC? Do you have an S corp? Do you have a C corp? Do you have a nonprofit? Those are all separate entities that are going to be different for everybody based off of your goals, and what you're wanting to, and what you aspire to do. And so you see how we're reverse engineering it, and we're backtracking, and it comes down to, like, also, it comes down to credit, it comes down to business credit. It comes down to the knowledge of building that up. How does that happen, and what does it take for you to do that? And so what I like about this question, and the strategies are going to be based off the client. The strategies are going to be based off of the goals of the client. The strategy is going to be based off of the team that we can help the client put together to help them. Where we can help them literally put a team to accomplish, and then that's where you go vertical from there. So it's almost like real estate. You lay the foundation was horizontal. The horizontal is kind of like what we're talking about as far as the plan, the goals, what does a client want. So that's the horizontal foundation that we're building, so we can go vertical from there, right?
Mm.
And when you're able to do that, it's very special, because then, we're doing this to help people. We're doing this to, help people along the way that may not have all the information, and may not have all of the knowledge, and maybe they just don't have a team that's gonna kind of help them. And maybe they just feel like the weight of the world just is just like holding them down, based off of just our economy right now. Let's be honest. Our economy isn't. You kind of have to be like, I've already figured all this stuff out. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
have that generational wealth already kind of set in place, where that's when the economy doesn't really matter anymore. How the economy is in terms of your well-being, in terms of where you're going to sleep tonight, what your next meal is going to be today or next week. You don't think about that as much when you're setting this generational wealth plan, right? And that's all. You know, with this podcast and what we're doing, Omar, is we're creating these options and these strategies for people so they can at least can create their own blueprint, and then they can put in the comments what their strategy is, or what their goals are, and then we can help them from there. That's the beautiful thing. If what I've learned in life is like when people ask for help, you'll be surprised who comes to help when they know that there's help needed. But if we never know and nobody reaches out to us and nobody puts comments in the section, how are we going to know how to help? We can keep putting out content and hopefully this resonates with as many people as possible. But the engagement is really where the power is, as far as being able to help others.
I'm so glad you said that last part. 'Cause that's what I was gonna kind of shift the conversation towards, is because if you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner and you're in like probably the first 5 years of doing business, more than likely you're of the mindset of like you do everything yourself, right? And I know I thought that way in the very beginning because only you are going to care so much about your business, and that to a degree is true, but there comes a point in your journey where you're going to need help, and you're going to need other people who specialize in business credit, building that business credit up, fixing your personal credit repair if that needs to, if that's the case, and asking for help. So because you don't have to do everything alone. You don't have to do everything alone. And I know that's a very kind of, even when I'm saying that, because again, I'm still not completely over that, right? Because I still do a lot of things by myself. But having met Thomari, knowing what he knows and what he does for his business, I will always go to him when it comes to credit repair on the personal side or the business side, because after doing all these videos together, I see that I trust him. I see the authenticity of him being trying to educate first, bring value first, and then figure out like how can we get you to the next step, right? And that is like who you want to surround yourself with, people you can trust and people who bring value to you first. And I'm so glad that we're doing this, and that we're talking about a little bit more other than personal credit. This is business credit. So again, these are for my my entrepreneurs, people who are maybe even considering getting into business for themselves, right? Maybe you're watching this and you're a W-2 employee, right? And I want to start something, and I want to make, and you're in research mode, right? You're trying to figure out how can I save myself some steps. And I guess another thing I really want to push too is like, I hope you don't get the sense that tomorrow, like I know sometimes for hesitation for people is I don't want to call because I don't, and then it's going to feel like a high pressure situation for me to go with your services. Do you know what I mean, Thomari?
Oh no, I totally know what you mean, and
Yeah, yeah, and that's not how I do my consultations. I know that's not how Thomari does his consultations, because again, we provide value first, education first, before we even get to that part of like how this is going to work, like as far as payment, right? Because first we have to see how we can help you first, right? How can we be a value? How can we be a value first before we even get to that part? And that's why the consultation is so important, right? Because everyone's situation is different. Everyone has like their own unique kind of uh, situation, so we can and the only way we know is if you reach out to us. And I hope by us continuing to put video out there when it comes to these topics, you see that hey, we care, that and we're continuing to do these and put together some information that hopefully you get some value from. And then you're like, hey, It's if not a phone call, maybe a virtual call, because I'm located here in the Austin area. So is Thomari, but he has business in Florida too. So he's kind of always kind of bouncing around between Texas and Florida. But we're here to help at the end of the day, and because we know if you help, because we've been there, we've been there, and if one thing you'll come to learn as an entrepreneur, and as you stay in this business, is like if you surround yourself with good people and good people who want to help you, you're gonna make it.
Absolutely. That's the name of the game. Relationships are everything,
Mm,
in business and life. And, the first step in a relationship is sometimes somebody asking for help, or sometimes it may be somebody telling their story. And sometimes when you tell your story, that's actually asking for help, because when people hear it, they're naturally, when I hear stories of what people have gone through, and I'm pretty sure, Omar, you're the same way. You're intrigued, to know more, and then, like, if you can help them, you're going to, you're just naturally going to, and if you can't, maybe you can direct them to who can, and the relationships that we make through the home buying process, or through the business setup process, because you can see people literally flourishing in their element. Anytime somebody runs their own business, oftentimes that's their passion, and seeing somebody operate in their passion, where you can literally physically, there's like electricity that comes out of, like when I go to Starbucks,
mm-hmm,
most Starbucks that I go to, they're like, the people there are like, they're passionate. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. How can I help you? You know what I mean? There's electricity that comes from that, because they don't necessarily have to be that way, but the culture that they're in, it screams passion. Or like when you run your own company, like, when I see people in coaching, and they're passionate about being coaches, it's like, man, there's a there's a energy that comes from that makes me want to, like, be a part of it,
mm,
and that environment that we're creating with financial literacy on this podcast, the environment we're creating as far as helping veterans and just people in general, in this podcast, it makes me, like, really get excited about every Wednesday that we can come here, and really just be transparent, be true, just be ourselves, and just spread the word that we've learned along the way.
mm, mm. I think that's a great way to end this. I, one thing I wanted to just say lastly before we sign off here is that, Kay, if it's so easy to share this or share a clip of this with somebody that you might know that is struggling or to start their business, right? Because again, when you're starting your business, you're so focused on the day to day, you're not even thinking about business credit. You're not even thinking about, like, hey, what's my long term strategy here, right? And at least plant the seed. This is, if anything, these videos plant the seeds for, like, hey, I just learned about a little bit about business credit. I learned a little bit about I think we talked about EIN numbers, and that's very important, which is getting on the path to establishing business credit. So we're planting the seed. So maybe next time you'll come back to this video, or if you share it with somebody or tag somebody in the comments, they could see this and get some value from it. Because again, this is you're eventually going to run into this if you stay in business long enough, because you need business credit. You need it, hands down. And the sooner you kind of come to terms with, hey, this is a part of my long term strategy plan, the better off you're going to be, I think, in the long run.
Absolutely, absolutely, and like I told you, thank you so much for having me. This been just rejoicing to know that that you're willing to put this information out for others, and for me to be a part of it. I just say I truly thank you for that opportunity,
Oh,
Omar.
you're very welcome, Tamari. I'm happy that we connected last year and that we both are doing our video, and that we both have been so consistent, and that we're continuing to do this, because I get a lot out of this personally, just knowledge, because we're talking about it. And I know when people reach out to us and just to inquire about, like, hey, I saw your video, and that kind of got me to that. that makes me feel like we're doing the right things, right? Because people are reaching out and they're doing the right thing by taking the first step, and that to me is beautiful.
Absolutely. That's why we do what we do. We're just gonna
That's it.
keep showing up and showing out.
That's it. That's it. All right, Tamari. Until next time, thank you, and I appreciate you.
Thank you as well. I appreciate you, Amar.